Sound, I'll give you the very shorthand version of what the difference is. So Elliott Bay, which we were over at our pier. A bay is a body of water that has one opening into a larger body of salt water. So Elliott Bay opens up into what we consider Puget Sound.
Look at Mount Rainier.
Now a sound is going to have two of those openings into a larger body of water. The Puget Sound is actually what's going to get you to the Pacific Ocean. So either through the Strait of Georgia or the Strait of Juan de Fuca, those will be your northern exits from the Puget Sound into the Pacific Ocean. That being said, a lot of folks might be wondering, well, I thought we were on the Pacific Ocean. Not quite. Seattle's kind of tucked into its own little bubble here, thanks to what we call the Olympic Mountain Range, or the Olympic Peninsula. So if you're looking off to your right, it's a little difficult looking into the sun there. As you see these massive mountains off in the distance, that's going to be our Olympic Mountain Range. So talking a little bit about that beautiful feature, a lot of people know or hear that it rains a lot in Seattle, it's cloudy a lot in Seattle, and you hear these rumors, they're kind of right and kind of wrong at the same time, and I'll tell you a little bit about why there's some truth to those and some falsity. Part of the reason why is we have these Olympic mountains, and so when clouds, when weather systems blow in from the Pacific Ocean, they're too heavy, they're too filled with moisture to actually clear that mountain range, so they've got to drop a lot of that moisture in order to get over the mountains and into what we consider Puget Sound. So out there on the peninsula, it rains a lot. In fact, the only national rainforest in the lower 48 in the United States exists on the Olympic Peninsula. It's called the Hoh National Rainforest, H-O-H. So for those of you outdoorsmen or women who are here for a while or planning another trip, I highly recommend the Olympic Peninsula, specifically the Hoh National Rainforest. It really is gorgeous, but it is very moist. Once those clouds drop all that moisture onto the Olympic Peninsula, we're then free to cruise into our sound here and into Seattle. The only problem is they don't see the mountain range that we also can't see on the other side to our east, which is the Cascade Mountain Range. That's going to separate us from the east side of Washington State. So what happens is these clouds get caught in between and they just kind of ping pong back and forth, developing this weather system where they can't really escape. So that's where part of the cloudy rumor of Seattle comes from. So it's not completely a rumor. There's some truth to it, there's some science to it. But as you can see today, it's not quite that way every day. Now also as we move through, we'll talk about the wildlife once I said, like I said a little bit. We get a lot of questions from folks out here, do you see whales? What types of things can you see while you're out here on the Sound? I'll give you a few examples of what you can see so you can keep your eyes open out here. Now a lot of the common ones that you'll see, you'll see your sea otters, your seals, a lot of harbor seals out here. You'll see their heads poking up, real playful, running around. You also see California sea lions. I saw the first one I had seen in about 6 weeks yesterday. Normally this time of year they're headed back down to California for the breeding season. It's only the males that you'll see up here. The reason why is they come up to eat all the salmon so that they can get big and strong and go down and fight for their partner during the mating season. Most of them are gone, but I have seen a few hanging around. So if you see any buoys out in the water, or for instance, water heads, which I'll point out a few, they may be out there getting some sun, relaxing, taking a break. Now occasionally you will see whales out here in the Puget Sound as well. It's a little more rare as we're closer to Elliott Bay. However, I've seen a few humpbacks while cruising out in the morning to some of these islands off to our right-hand side. We do have orcas. We have the local orca pods. There's also transient orca pods. There's two different types. Now, when you hear the term orca, most people think killer whale. The actual name for orcas in native languages translates to whale killers. And the reason why is because those transient pods seal just jumps up on top of the back of this boat. And he's absolutely blown away. They have this standoff for a moment where they're just staring at each other. You can't figure out what this seal's doing on his boat. And then about a minute or so later, this pot of Orcus cruises by. What's interesting about this is the seals and sea lions, they can actually tell the difference in the languages and calls between the two types of Orcus. So one easy identifier is that when those transient pods are around who eat things other than the salmon, you will see creatures attempting to get as far away, including out of the water, as possible from those species of Orcus. It's kind of an interesting fact about those. We are starting to make our southern journey. We're going to head towards what we know here as west of Seattle. West Seattle's going to be off to our right. Off in the distance a little, we will approach a little closer. The very point of which is Alki Point. For those of you who have heard of Alki or Alki Beach, the actual beach will be around to the west side, which will be a little bit out of view for us. We will see the head of Alki here. Interesting fact about Alki is actually pronounced Alki. Alki. The pronunciation was changed at the turn of the century. The reason why, as many of you know, alcohol was prohibited during Prohibition in the United States for a small period of time. Well, it got really awkward to be known as from Alki. They didn't want to be known as an Alki, so they changed the pronunciation. The interesting thing about this part of Seattle is it's actually the original neighborhood of the first white settlers here in Seattle, known as the Denny Party. They came over from the East Coast, and they actually initially named this area that they settled in New York Alki. The reason being is that they saw it as a potential place to build their version of New York on the West Coast. Now, what they didn't take into account is that being out here on West Seattle, when it gets into the inclement months, it gets very windy, it's very cold, it's very rainy, so it was very difficult to settle, and they didn't really expect this. They saw it as this great oasis of land. And then they met some of the Native American tribes, specifically the chief of Seattle, as we know him, and we know our city as today. And he let them know, hey guys, this isn't the best area to settle. It's going to be very difficult to build your homes out here. You're going to battle the wind, you're going to battle Mother Nature. Why don't you just head a little bit east, right over across the water there. You'll find some great resources, you'll find some great land that our people have used for years. And so they took the advice. They came over to this side of the water, and that is when they began to settle and build what we now know as Seattle, which after receiving the help and the great advice and the friendship of these local tribes, specifically Chief Seattle, they did decide to name the city in his honor, which we love to honor and make sure to share with people today. It's quite unique in the fact that it's the biggest major city in the lower 48 that does carry the name of a Native American leader.
I did not know that.
That being said, we're going to cruise along here. I am going to put the mic down for a little bit and give you some time to reflect, to take in some of the sights. As I said, I will be around. If you have questions, feel free to ask. I will do my very best to answer them for you.
So this is salt
also
water.
can answer any questions you may have. But I'll set this down and let you enjoy our surroundings for a little bit. We'll hop back on in a little bit, discuss West Seattle. We'll discuss the Wabash waterheads, which we will get into. And a little bit more of downtown. But it is warm enough out here, as you can tell. Make sure to keep yourself hydrated. We've got plenty of great refreshments and options down at the second deck bar. I also saw Eddie running around taking out some orders, so make sure you use this time. If you want to grab something to drink, use the restroom, grab some refreshments. Now's a great time to do so.
down the buoys?